Welcome to Between the Sheets, the non-judgmental podcast where we're going to cover various sexual health and wellness topics. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Zwonitzer. I'm a urology and sexual health nurse practitioner, and I love helping my patients and listeners discover and develop their most satisfying sexual experiences. Between the Sheets is here to normalize the conversations about sexual health and cover everything from basic anatomy to the most taboo topics and everything in between. Real talk, real pleasure, one episode at a time. So come on, let's get between the sheets. This episode is sponsored by Boston Scientific and its educational website on erectile dysfunction, edcure.com. One study estimated that more than 50% of men over the age of 40 have some degree of erectile dysfunction, which can be frustrating and confusing. Go to edcure.com to find information on erectile dysfunction and treatment options, including long-term treatment options offered by Boston Scientific. Boston Scientific does not endorse any statements or opinions expressed during this episode. Hey, welcome back to Between the Sheets. I am excited for this week's conversation with you. We're going to go a little out of the box here and talk about some non-monogamy and jealousy and kind of just non-traditional relationships. And I'm so excited to have Dr. Joli Hamilton. She's a PhD in relationship coach, psychologist, professor. She does a podcast. She's an author. She's a jealousy expert. She is going to be an amazing resource for us today. Welcome, Joli. I'm excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Stephanie. I'm always psyched to talk just a little bit outside the box, like just a little bit.
Yeah, I love it. Yes, I love it because, growing up and coming from the culture that we have in the United States, it's been very heterosexual. It's been very monogamous focused. And there are so many different types of relationships that bring people happiness and pleasure.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the conversation about this too can also help everybody, even people who are like, oh, I like my monogamy. Yeah, that's great. And the relationship conversations that happen in non-monogamy are good. Like they're good for everybody. Like this is a completely transferable skill set. So
yeah, that's one of my favorite things when I have had friends that participate in the lifestyle and I've learned more about different types of relationships is the level and depth of communication is amazing and has given me ideas not only in, work relationships and friendships and things like that, but in my own personal relationships, like how to take things to that next level, that deeper level. And I just find it so amazing, the level of connection and honest communication that you have in non-monogamy.
that's it. So, often people will come to me thinking like, it's all about communication. I'm like, it is, but not the communication you're used to. Like, you may be a fantastic communicator in your monogamous context, and this is still going to be a complete game changer in like, so what are the things we have to talk about? Many of the things are things that not only have we not been talking about as a dyad, as a couple, but they're things culturally we have been conditioned we just don't say. Like, for instance, being attracted to other people while in a monogamous couplehood. Like, that's something I would have everybody talk about. That's a good thing to talk about, even if you're going to have really clear monogamous expectations. Just bringing that in and being able to talk about it and normalize it can free up a lot of energy that we spend trying not to talk about or trying not to think about a thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can appreciate someone who is attractive, but I'm still committed to my partner. Or I can, we can get into the jealousy conversation because I know that's your expertise. But, I can set aside that for a moment when he's like, hey, that woman is really beautiful. Like, did you see her? Or did you see that gorgeous dress on her or something like that? And I can appreciate that knowing that in my partnership, he is just saying like, hey, she's pretty. Like, did you see that? Like, just like you would like, hey, did you see that waterfall over there? It was really cool looking. And we don't have to be jealous and we don't have to be like, oh, you're going to go sleep with her tonight.
Right. It doesn't have to be a complete breakdown.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. And so I think, what you're saying is really interesting. So how do couples like start having those conversations and start breaking down those walls and barriers?
Well, it starts differently for everyone, but many people, what happens is they're exposed to the idea of non-monogamy, whether that is through a movie, a TV show, whether, they have a friend who tells them, oh, we're doing this other thing. they get the idea. And when the language, what I found in my research is when the language enters your awareness, that is when there is this moment of, okay, when I know the word, say, polyamory, does it resonate with me? Do I bring that conversation to my partner and say, "Hey, I know about this thing?" And a lot of people don't. They're afraid to
Mhm.
because they think that inherently by just talking about it, we're like, "Oh, we're going to mess something up." But actually, the more things we can talk about and be clear about what are our expectations, what do we want to build together, the better off we are.
Mhm.
So ideally, people are bringing these conversations early. Now, unfortunately, many people get really nervous about talking about this. And so the conversation itself, the actual opening conversation about like, hey, I know that we've only ever talked about monogamy, and maybe we haven't even talked about that. Maybe we've just been doing it by default because we didn't even talk about talking about it. So I want to talk about this other thing. Can we talk about it from an exploratory perspective? And that
Mm.
is usually the best language to like enter into the spirit of, can we talk about this as a topic
Yeah.
before we talk about actions, right? Separate out the ideas and the way we might shift our paradigm from taking actions. Because if we combine those, this is where we hear people going to a hotel and going to the bar and trying to pick someone one up for a threesome before they've ever even like had any conversations about how will we treat each other and what will our aftercare plan be. We need to have a lot of conversations before we take actions, ideally.
Yeah, I mean, you might not even know that aftercare is a thing if you've only ever been in monogamous relationships. Although it has a great role in monogamy as well, and everyone should do it. But
It
if you,
does.
yeah, it does. But if you haven't been around that language and those ideas, that's foreign in and of itself.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I find, I always say that my focus on non-monogamy is really just that it asks us to really contemplate what our relationship is made of.
Mhm.
Have we consciously created this relationship with the people we are in it with? It's not actually about how many partners you have. It's
Mhm.
really about being incredibly clear about what we're doing together, and that you like we can do that with any number of partners, but also it makes space for there to be change over time, right?
Mhm.
Because we are likely going to have shifting desires over time, and as we do, what we can't talk about is much more likely to get us in trouble than the things we can and do talk about.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it goes back to your original point of the communication. And I love that you said, just explore the topic. Like, just because you want to say, hey, like, I watched this Sister Wives show, I watched this other show, whatever. And, this polyamory idea came up. Like, what do you think of that? Have you ever heard of it? Even
Yep,
if you decide that that doesn't work for you as a couple and you stay monogamous, it allows you to open your mind because you may meet someone that does that lifestyle and has a relationship like that. And now you have respect and you have understanding and you've had some language conversations already that then you are more approachable for this other person who might be very nervous to talk about it because they've gotten shut down from friends in the past who are just not open to the conversation or something.
absolutely. One of the things we can do culturally is to have more honest conversations about all relationship types. And, non-monogamy is not nearly as rare as people imagine, right?
Mhm.
The studies show us, and these are probably vastly underreported because people don't always come out about their sexual identities. But 5% of people are practicing non monogamy. 20% have tried it at some point in their adult life. 20% is the same amount of people as who have cats or play musical instruments. Like we all know somebody who has
Yeah.
tried this. But if we don't have a comfort with, hey, just because they're talking about something or trying something, it's, whoa, this is not a threat to me. What if I get
Right.
curious? So, yeah, having these conversations is as much about the collective as it is about the individual.
Yeah, I love that. And it just makes things more I mean, it's just like any other conversations that we've had that we're not in the 80s anymore as far as, homophobia and transphobia and things like that. We've come so far. Like, let's come that far with non-monogamy as
Yes.
well and just understand that there truly are different ways for people to be happy and to find joy in relationships. And look at how many people cheat on their spouses and how many marriages end in adultery. and how maybe if they had explored other types of relationships or been more honest in their communication, could we have avoided cheating per se and explored a different type of
Yeah.
relationship?
It is wild to me, and I think this comes up with most of my colleagues, most of my friends who are non-monogamous, that how people will get big pushback about the idea of non-monogamy when what we're talking about is honest, conscientious communication with your partner that is, like, collaboratively designed when we know what the stats on cheating are. That's not collaborative, that's not consensual, and the STI risks are
Mhm.
much higher in cheating monogamous relationships than they are, like, much, much, much higher than they are in consensual non-monogamous relationships because and it's just common sense.
Mhm.
You don't wanna see the, like, the STI panels hit your medical billing. You don't wanna see condoms hit your credit card, and
Mhm.
so we make poorer choices for ourselves, and then we get poorer outcomes, right? So
Mhm.
this is really about a conversation that can open up to, "Hey, this is a real thing. It is an option." And when it comes to the longevity thing, like, "Hey, what if opening up is a way to preserve a relationship?" I
Mhm.
mean, maybe, but I also think about what if it is a way for people to have the conversations that even just let them discern this relationship doesn't function anymore, right? Like, what are we trying to preserve, right? A relationship that is holding together by all the things we're not saying to each other. Is that bringing us the joy and fulfillment that we actually want, or should we have these conversations and be brave and also learn what our partner actually wants out of this
Mhm.
phase of life? I have a lot of clients who bring this conversation up when the kids are just heading out, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, we have more bandwidth." And a shocking number of them are like, "Actually, you know what? We could do this now." Maybe they wouldn't have before, maybe they would, but some phase of life has shifted and they feel an openness to new experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's beautiful, especially just that core connection between two people that you get with this conversation, right? You get to explore what your boundaries are and what maybe you're open to, maybe you're not. And there's so many times where we should talk that deeply and on that level with each other,
Yeah.
and we don't. And I love that this can really bring a couple closer together, whether they end up going and exploring other opportunities or not. It's just such an amazing relationship building time.
Yeah, it does often surprise people. I call it the relational renaissance, the opening renaissance, because often people who have become there's been space between them, they haven't known how to bridge the gap between them. They do find, like, this brought us closer together. Now, that said, realistically, after the renaissance, if you decide, yeah, you know what? This really is the direction we're headed. We've learned a lot about each other and we're going to move into an action phase.
Mhm.
There is often a period of pretty significant readjustment. What's happening? What kind of non monogamy are we doing? Because there are so many different ways to do this. Do we want the same kind of non monogamy? Does
Mhm.
that work for us? And it's not uncommon for, like, one person to be more interested in swinging, another person to be more interested in polyamory. Now we've got some stuff to work out. Like, how are we going to make that work? So, I love to think of this as, like, it's an ebb and flow. We're going to go through periods where we're feeling closer than ever with our partner, periods where we're like, "Wow, this is very high differentiation. This is a lot of I want different things than my partner," and that is very strange because monogamy teaches us to always match and to
Mhm.
always be exactly in the same spot, and all of a sudden, not necessarily, and that doesn't have to be a bad thing. But we do have to unpack the monogamous conditioning that says you're in danger because you're not exactly matching. We have to build resilience into the
Yeah.
relationship.
So maybe do you have or do you find that couples start with like, here's kind of an idea of what we want, but here are our hard stops? Like, I am not okay with you doing X, Y, and Z with someone other than me. And then, renegotiate as time goes on. But when you're starting having some of these set boundaries, does that kind of help develop the relationships?
Well, it's not a black and white issue because
Mhm.
some people really do start from the premise of I want to preserve this relationship as close to its current being as possible. And other people, and so they'll often rely on rules and saying you can't do this or you can't do that. And over time, yes, renegotiate, but But that's actually only one way to handle this.
Okay.
Another way is to start getting clear on what is this relationship satisfying in me? Where are we thriving? Who are we for each other? And start really building on the way this relationship is unique. And even if
Mm,
I go and have this kind of sex or this kind of connection with another person, I'm never going to have our connection. Now, that is
right.
actually it's scarier for most people, to be honest, right? We think we'll be safe by saying, well, how about if you don't have anal sex with anyone else and you never say, I love you to anyone else? And we only have sex with the lights on with other people, but we never have sex in the dark, whatever it is. We make up this imagination of these boundaries will keep me safe. But in fact, what will keep you safe, if there is such a thing in relationship, is starting to build this deep resilience and trust in my partner and I have an incommensurable connection. It is unique, it is unusual, it can't be replicated. And that means also being able to regulate through the jealousy that is
Yeah.
going to come up. Jealousy is going to enter the picture. It just is at some point, and we got to deal with it.
Okay. So when that jealousy comes up, because it would for me, I have always been a monogamous
Sure.
person. I have explored and it didn't make me feel good. It was a thing for me. So, how do you work through that because I understand what you're saying. I can see how you can have different levels of relationships with different people, different styles, things like that, because certainly what I have with my partner is different than what I have with my best friend, but I love both of them and I need both of them in my life. So I can
Yeah.
see what you're saying there,
Yep.
right? So how do I work through that jealousy to not hate that my partner has a beautiful connection with another human being?
Yeah. Well, one of the first things is we have to work through the idea that romantic love has to be exclusive and the
Mm,
exclusivity is demanded, right? In our friendships, that's a great example. We already know this. We know how to do this. In our friendships, we don't demand that our friends only have one friend.
yeah.
We understand that our friends will have other friends. And unless we are having a pretty significant self-esteem issue in an ongoing way, we do not throw ourselves into a tizzy because our friend goes out to dinner with someone else or
Yeah.
because they are the bridesmaid and we don't get to be in that wedding.
Mm,
Instead, we deal with it from a place of multiplicity. We really embrace the fact that that's the norm. So really what we're doing is having to transfer that skill into romantic relationships.
okay.
Now, saying that is easy. Doing it
Yeah. Two
Doing it
different
is
things.
different, right? Because we're talking about totally, yeah. And I am a non-monogamous person who researches jealousy for a living and is still jealous. Like I still experience jealousy.
Yeah.
What I've done though is I have recalibrated my imagination to say that jealousy itself isn't the problem. I'm going to have a feeling just like I feel anger or sadness and I work with that feeling, but I don't decide that because I'm jealous, things are necessarily all going to fall apart. For
Mm,
instance, my current partner has been with me for 16 years. He's had plenty of other partners. He still chooses me. So we practice working with our jealousy through a process of noticing it in our body, learning to sit with the feeling, talking about it, normalizing it,
mhm,
and not moving into panic mode takes also surrounding ourselves with community who
mhm.
understand, yeah, jealousy is a part of life. Monogamy tells us that it will protect us from jealousy, but I study jealousy in monogamous context too, and it just doesn't. Sadly,
Yeah.
like I wish if that were the solution, okay, sure,
Yeah.
but it doesn't work. So instead, we're learning how to actually work with the jealousy in ways that help us tolerate it at first and also make clear. So we notice it, we name it, we unpack all of the stories we've got in our head
Mhm,
around what jealousy means, and then we make really good relational agreements. How are
mm,
we treated in this relationship? How do we show up for each other? How do we offer reassurance? How do
mm.
we do aftercare? And all of that, that's what builds a foundation that I'm like, yep, I'm jealous right now, but you know what? I'll be fine this evening or I'll be fine
Yeah.
tomorrow morning. I will
Yeah.
get through this.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, I think, I have actually met people who can't stand the fact that their friends have other friends and I'm just like, what is the problem here?
Yeah.
Like so I did,
Yeah.
so I can
Yeah.
like kind of like play with that in my mind and kind of see how that would change other things. But no, I love the fact that you can kind of acknowledge it, just like you would acknowledge like your anger or something like that, and not let it ruin your day or your relationship with your partner. And kind of just allow it to be and feel it and move forward.
Yeah, it definitely is a practice. Let's be clear. Like it is a practice, an ongoing practice. A lot of people come to realize that the jealousy was as much about being ashamed that they even felt jealousy or
Mm,
ashamed that they had to deal with this feeling as anything else, right? So we also
yeah.
need to destigmatize jealousy itself and not try to get rid of it. Jealousy is just an emotion, like all of their emotions. It's just information, but we were taught to be ashamed of jealousy when we were little kids, right? If you are jealous when you have a new sibling arrive, that is we get told a thing. I think maybe this new generation of children are being raised a little bit better. I think they're not necessarily getting shamed for their jealousy, but I mean,
Yeah.
even my own kids, they're Gen Z. And I
Yeah.
didn't know to de-shame jealousy when they were little.
Right.
I didn't
No,
know.
it's the green-eyed
So we got to
monster,
do that
right?
work together.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes total sense. So, as you're working through this, I mean, it's not a light switch. It takes people a while. It,
No.
it takes practice, like you said. What are some things that you can, you could tell some people, okay, here's maybe a couple tips or tricks to start to work on your jealousy before they seek you out to work with you individually?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the very first thing to work with is to start understanding what your signals for jealousy are, like really, really early.
Mm,
So we can do this also with the imaginal. We don't have to play with the hardest stuff first, right? A lot of people will
okay.
start working on their jealousy, say, when their partner starts dating.
Mm,
In my preference, if we had a say over it, I would ask you to start working with your jealousy in your imagination first. So we're going
okay.
to do something like remember a time when your partner has been someplace where you've seen them get attention. Bring that
Oh,
memory up. Notice what the sensations are in your body. Do you get a constriction in your gut? Do you feel like you've got a weight on your chest? Do you feel like your fists are clenching? Do you have a constriction in your throat? You can't talk. Is your heart racing? What's happening for you? Everybody gets different sensational clues about jealousy. And I want to notice those clues as early in the process as possible because those clues, they're there for a reason. Jealousy
mm,
itself, it wasn't originally about your romantic relationships. It was about your connection to your caregiver. It was about your
mhm,
connection to your mother, your father, your tribal connection to these people keep me alive. When we grow up and we transfer all of those attachment feelings to our romantic partners, it feels like we're going to die. We're not. We're not actually going to die, but it feels like it. So I need to learn those sensation clues so that I can intervene with my thoughts, with thought interrupters, and also with support, right? I want to notice. So if I notice one of my clues that I'm feeling jealous is I get this electrical feeling up the back of my neck and my ears start to feel really, really hot.
okay.
And I'll notice that I'm moving my hands a lot. I'm not clenching, but I'm like fidgety with my hands. So what I do in that moment, I say, whew, here it is. I'm jealous. Okay. I just say it out loud because
Mhm,
demonizing it, trying to push it away, that hasn't been working. So I name it. Then I look under the surface. What else is going on here? What jealousy is a complex emotion made of other emotions. So is my jealous more like angry jealous? Is it more like sad jealous? Is it feeling like shameful jealous? Like I feel like I should go run and hide under a pillow and nobody should see me? Am I feeling fear? Am I just in a full panic response? Your flavor of jealousy deserves to be acknowledged. So now we name like what are the sensations and what are the feelings in there? Just following that process has made space, right? If I have a jealous experiment and I just want to play with my jealousy for like 2 to 5 minutes, right there, I've created a little space to just say, okay, so I survived that 5 minutes
mhm,
of contemplating, imagining jealousy. I can also do that experiment in real life. I can do it when I'm at a party with someone I care about, and I can say, I'm going to watch them. And when I feel those pangs come up, I'm going to let myself just be with that feeling. I'm going to regulate as best I can, and I'm going to work on that narrative. What's the story I'm telling myself about the jealousy?
mhm.
Does it mean that I'm in mortal danger? Does it mean that I'm not cute enough? What's going on? Like what's the
Yeah.
story? Everybody's mental chatter is going to be different here. So I want to get to know what mine is.
I love that. So there's a lot of self exploration in this as well as couple exploration.
Jealousy is a huge source of wisdom for a couplehood, absolutely,
Mhm.
but for you, because how you work with jealousy also has a lot of information in it on how you react in really hard moments in your relationship.
Mm.
And if you can build self awareness around that, then we can start to put in jealousy rescue plans. And your jealousy rescue plan is a great tip to have. Like, we want to have this tool at our ready so that we know what to do when we're feeling crappy inside of a relationship. You deserve to have the resilience, the ability to like haul yourself back from that edge. So when somebody tells me that they just wait for jealousy to go away, I'm like, oh, that's
Mm.
hard. Like that's not playing the life on the hard setting. What if instead you really be with yourself and you let this be about like, wow, I'm going to know me better. And
Mhm.
your story of jealousy comes right out of your experience of childhood. If you
Mm.
had a lot of experiences of being left, of being abandoned, or if you have experiences of betrayal, your story of jealousy is going to be impacted by that. That doesn't make you a bad person. And it doesn't mean that you couldn't do non monogamy if you wanted to. People tell me all the time, like, oh, I could never do non monogamy because I'm jealous. I'm like, me too. It's okay. You could. And also, you don't have to. And
Yeah.
you don't have to. It's totally fine. Monogamy is great for lots and lots of people.
Yeah. No, I think that's amazing. I love the self exploration. And I can just, as you're talking, I'm like thinking of myself through past relationships. And I got married very young to my high school sweetheart. And just like as I'm sitting here and listening to you, how I reacted during that relationship versus how I react now in a relationship is so vastly different because I've done the self work, not necessarily
Yep.
specifically on jealousy, but just on understanding myself and what I want and what my boundaries are for myself and what I allow and all of those things that, yeah, I can handle a lot more in a much kinder way to myself and to my partner now than I ever could have in the past.
Yeah, that's the thing is we're coming to grips with who we are in relationships because every couplehood is made of individuals.
Mhm.
And as I grow, as I mature, hopefully I'm increasing my skill set. You know, if I think back to how I behaved in my jealousy in my 20s versus now, like, oh, those are vastly different experiences. But it's not that the jealousy went away. And it's not
Mhm.
that non monogamy magically protected me from it. Quite the opposite. I am introduced to my jealousy over and over again, but I have grown my maturity, my ability to
Mhm.
be with this difficult feeling and treat it as no worse than anger or sadness or shame. And there's a certain gentleness, and I really appreciate this because we all deserve to be able to be gentle with
Mhm.
our feelings, including our jealousy. Like, I wish everybody got a little bit of an education on this. You don't have to do non-monogamy, but some
Mhm.
some jealousy destigmatizing, we should all get that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. So the other word that you're bringing up a lot is shame. And one thing that I think of
Yeah.
in a such a monogamy focused world, or at least the United States, is that there is shame around. And I feel like it's not that there should be, but I just feel like there is. And and I feel like that holds people back from telling their friends, "Hey, this is what we do. This is what I like. I love having multiple partners because I get different things from each relationship, etc." So how do you help people with that?
Yeah, this is one of the trickiest parts of my work. I was actually just recording an episode of my own podcast on this topic because it's so challenging to find a way of being in relationship that works so well for you and then feel like you have to hide. But
Mhm.
we live in a monocentric culture. And so every day people are waking up inside of this culture and to to flow counter to that takes energy. It takes
Mhm.
effort. So one of the things I like to talk about is what is my energy management? Like how much energy do I have to spend on being out about this? And for some people they're like it's pretty minimal. I don't have a ton of energy. But that comes at a cost. One thing we have to bring into the picture then is do you feel isolated? Do you feel alone?
Mm.
It can be incredibly ironic to find yourself in 2 or 3 meaningful relationships, meaningful connections, or find yourself immersed in the lifestyle where you feel like, yeah, I have this great community, but I have to
Mhm.
pretend like all of this community doesn't exist when I'm at home in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
That feeling of isolation is so brutal. And this is something we can all help with, right? We can just normalize the fact that multiple ways of relating are possible, that they do work. In fact, our studies show that relational satisfaction in non-monogamy is actually quite high. It is surprisingly high given the fact that what we hear about tends to be the sensationalized, the big breakups or the
Yeah.
splashy stuff. We don't hear about the boring people home popping popcorn for their 5-person polycule. We're just not hearing about that,
Right.
but it does exist. So yeah, we have I think we have to have the conversations, but also be aware of how much energy do we have to spend on our outness? Because I get it. I'm very out and I feel lucky to be out.
Mhm.
And it does take some energy. I wind up educating people about
Yeah.
non-monogamy when I'm not working. And that is kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. When you said watching a popcorn with your 5 people, it reminded me there was a show on Netflix, How to Build a Sex Room. It was out a few years ago, and it was a
Yes.
British woman. Oh my god, I loved this show. And one of them was building a bed big enough for their 7 people of their polyamorous relationship, and they called it the Cuddle Puddle. And I just thought that was so much fun,
Yes.
like, so great. That show was awesome. I loved it.
That was very entertaining. I'm sorry they only did 1 season. They should have
I
done
was
more.
too.
There should be
Yeah.
more. We all need a sex room.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, it's the getting it out there and talking about it and destigmatizing it and, having this be something that is okay to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, it's surprising too because sometimes I'll hear people act like non-monogamy is still shocking to them and I'm like, "Are you not? Our algorithms are not the same." And I know that's true. That's how algorithms are, right? Like so we're all being fed a world that is unique to us. So cuz
Right.
in if you were to look at my Instagram, you would think that surely 80 to 90% of people are polyamorous, right? Like
Yeah.
that's just it would just look like that's the norm and the monogamous people would actually be the like, "Oh, that's interesting. Oh,
Yeah.
I've never tried that before." So we're being fed this view of a world that isn't realistic. And
Mhm.
one of the things that happened to me early on in my own coming out journey was I had multiple people in my life, especially elders, people who they got married in the 50s, 60s, early 70s. As I was coming out to them, a lot of them said, "Oh, honey, I hear you, but just don't do that. That never works. That never works." And
Mm.
I heard it over and over. And they meant it with love. They did. And it took me a minute to realize that I needed to ask a follow-up question. And I started asking that question because they were saying that never works. They didn't say, "I've never heard of it." They said that never works. They had seen it. They had tried it. They also didn't know what to do. And they're all out there. We're all out here trying to reinvent the wheel. What if we get support? What if we talked about this? So as I
Mhm.
started talking to those aunties, those well-meaning neighbors who were like, "That never works," I said, "Were you like, did you have some up close experience?" And many of them were like, "Well, yeah, I saw this or that, or I did this or that." And I said, "Were you all alone? Were you the only person you knew there?"
Mm.
Yes. The universal experience was yes. And I had to hide it. And we didn't know what to do. And then we got into like our triad, got into this big thing, and then we didn't know what to do. We couldn't, and then we couldn't move into a house together because we weren't
Mm.
allowed to have 3 people in that house. And that's just as big a hindrance as anything like jealousy, right? Like the
Sure.
actual troubles of trying to live in a multi-person relationship with no support and feeling like you're all alone when we're not alone. You're
Mhm.
not alone.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful. Having the internet has made it a little bit easier because we can
Mhm.
at least find out that truly, like through podcasts like this, that you aren't alone.
Yeah.
But wow, what a different world it would be if every time you got a wedding invitation, it said +1 or do you need more? Just even that. Just even that. Right? Like,
Yeah.
or what if when you went to a furniture store, instead of selling a love seat as a 2-person thing, a love seat were the big couch? What if the love
Mm.
seat were the big couch?
Yeah.
It's like mono norms are built into our everyday language, right? We're asked, "Do you have a partner?" Not, "Do you have partners?" And so we build our worldview around that. So there are little
Yeah.
tiny tweaks that we can make that just make space for people to be more open about what their
Mhm.
reality are. It makes a big difference, even just a tiny tweak like that.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've never thought to say, do you need more than a plus one? It doesn't even occur to me. And not that I'm not trying to be rude.
Yeah.
It doesn't, that's not the
Nope.
language we
Just didn't
speak.
even think.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
That's so
And
interesting. I love that.
it happens in birthing rooms. Yeah, it
Ugh,
happens in birthing rooms all the time now. Like lots of polycules have families that want to be all together for the birth of their child. I have multiple clients who are pregnant right now, right? And they have to go through this process of like making it clear that they need to have, 3 people or 4 people in their birthing room. And like the hospitals by and large are being quite welcoming. Like in a lot of areas, they're being welcoming about this, but we just don't include the language. And
yeah.
even just living in multi person households, there are certain places in the country where we're starting to get some protection for, yeah, of course we can have multi adult households. Why wouldn't we?
Mhm.
It's no different than intergenerational living. Right. And with mortgage rates these days, a polycule is a great thing for a mortgage.
Yeah.
Oh, but if your municipality isn't allowing for multiple renters, that's a problem that needs
Yeah.
resolving, deserves resolving.
Yeah. Now you use the term polycule. So explain that to me.
Yes.
Is it where you have people who are living together and they're in a relationship with all of each other versus you and your partner have other partners, but you don't interchange the partners? Describe that for me.
Yeah, so a polycule is a really broad term. We could use that to describe any cluster of people who relate in lots of different ways. So it could be like I have local to me polycule. There are 5 people, 5 adults all living in one house, raising 3 children. That's a polycule. But I have also been in polycules where we all lived across the country from each other, but we were all relating to each other in different ways. Not all the same way, though. Like
Okay.
there's another term we could toss in here, metamor. A metamor is your
Okay.
partner's partner. So if I am partnered with somebody and they have another partner, well, I kind of have a relation with that person, but not directly, right? And so
Hmm.
what happens? And then over time, my metamor may become my friend. And so now we have more. And now, wait, at some point, I might actually have a relationship with them. And now our relationship starts to shift. So, polycule is a nice broad term that we can apply to any open group of people who are relating. Another word people will sometimes use is constellation. Like
Huh.
who's in your constellation? Just like here's all these
Okay.
stars. You know how sometimes the stars are connected to like 3 other
Yeah.
stars and sometimes just to one? Like that. We don't
Okay.
know. And you find out by asking or by waiting for people to tell you. It can be really interesting. Like watching somebody draw on a whiteboard the charts of their constellation can be very interesting. It makes for
Yeah.
a good party.
I bet. And calling it a constellation makes it sound so pretty and wonderful.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. It's a great reminder for me that it's totally like how you look at the stars and it's just stars. It's the
Mhm.
meaning I make out of the relationship of those stars that creates the constellation, right? I
Yeah.
as the viewer, I come to know these stars as Leo or these stars as Cassiopeia. And that's that's a really beautiful metaphor for how it's the meaningful relationships between people that start to
Mhm.
form these clusters. And through these clusters, it's not that different from having groups of friends. We
Mm.
just start to make things a little bit more clarified and clear, right? And
Yeah.
just to be clear, not all polycules have sex. Not all non monogamous people are having sex. We tend to center the sexual piece, but you can have a whole group of asexual people who are like,
Mhm.
yeah, we're a polycule, but we don't have sex with anybody. Also, sometimes one person is just like, yep, I don't have sex. That's just not what I do. Sometimes we have people who are life partnered to each other who
Mhm.
also, like you said, they also each have other partners, but they're the live together couple. And so one of the things we can also do is decenter the idea that it's always about sex. Because it might
Mm.
be about sex. And in the lifestyle, it tends to be about sex. So the
Yeah.
lifestyle or swinging is when I'm specifically centering things on this is a couple going to an event specifically to engage in sex with new partners, multiple partners. But in polyamory, we're really looking at multiple meaningful relationships, which
Okay.
may or may not include sex.
Interesting. Now, I like that differentiation. Thank you for making that for me because I know couples who have sexual partners, non-sexual partners, things like that. And I don't always know the terms and the how do you say things. And I know I should just ask because everybody is allowed to have whatever they want. But I like knowing the terms so I sound like I'm in the know and you can talk to me and be comfortable with
Yeah.
me because I'm accepting. Here's a word I know.
Yeah. It's so funny too because, we don't ask questions about people's sex lives, generally speaking, right? So it is tricky business
Mhm.
because I remember when my cousin came out as gay in the 80s, right? And his mother was asked all these questions about his sex life. And her answer every single time was, "You don't ask those questions about my straight son's sex life. So how about we shut up? How about
Right.
that?" So it's like it is tricky ground, right? Like asking
Mhm.
someone about their relationship specifically through the lens of, well, do you guys have sex or not? Because then we're centering the idea that sex is what defines a relationship as intimate or romantic. But I've had life building partnerships that were not sexual. And I've had
Mm.
life building partners that were sexual. And the way we talk about that, it's so sticky. And at the same time, it's interesting. I get it. Like, I wanna know the details too. Like, I wanna know what people are doing. So, we're walking, tender ground here where I think it has a lot to do with why are you asking? And
Mhm.
and what is it that you really wanna know? So a question I love to be asked is, "Hey, your relationship looks so interesting. I would love to know more about it."
Mm.
What are you open to sharing? Please don't share anything that you don't want to, but I'm so here for it and I'm open. I'd love to hear because I don't get to talk about all of my relationships with everybody, right?
Yeah.
Like as a polyamorous person, you're often like kind of skirting around details and
Mhm.
just letting things go. So if you become the safe person
Mhm.
who you can actually say all the things to, yeah, you are going to get the good stories too. You're
Yeah.
going to get the fun stories.
That's great. I love it. This is such an interesting conversation. And I really do hope that a lot of people not only listen to this episode, but take it to heart that it's okay to explore conversations with other people and allow them to be whoever they are. There's room for you to explore within your own relationship and your own person and figure out what it is that you truly want out of life and out of relationships. Because I really think you're right. We need to move this conversation forward and get it to be more open and honest and accepting in our world of this monogamous world that there are more options and they're beautiful options.
Absolutely. Here, here. Plurality is good for everyone. Let us just accept the fact that we don't have to do all the same things, and that makes the world more interesting.
Yes, absolutely. Jolie, thank you so much for being on here. Before we wrap up, give a plug for your podcast and what you have going on. And then, of course, we'll put links in the show notes.
Absolutely. So if you're interested in opening up or you're just like, what the hell was she talking about? I need to know a little bit more, but also, I'm a little scared. It's fine. I would love for you to join me at my next free salon. The easiest way to get to the salon is go to joliquiz.com, JOLIQUIZ.com. It's 10-question quiz, kind of like a Cosmo quiz. That'll just put you on a scale. Are you on the end of like, oh, hell no, we're not ready yet? Or, hey, maybe, let's talk about this. That quiz will then invite you into our free salon where I talk about the 5 pillars of successful open relating. And that is a totally non committal. You can just come and listen and find out a little bit more about this wild and wacky world of non monogamy. And if you like this conversation, you might also like my podcast. It's called Playing with Fire.
I love that. Thank you so much for your knowledge and expertise. What a fun conversation today.
Thank you so much for hosting me, Stephanie. This was
Yeah,
fantastic.
absolutely. Everybody have a great day and go have some fun between the sheets. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us and exploring sexual health topics here on Between the Sheets. New episodes are available every Wednesday. Please subscribe and rate our podcast so we can reach more listeners. And don't forget to tell your friends, partners, and anyone who will listen about Between the Sheets. Send any comments, questions, or stories to podcastbetweenthe.sheets@gmail.com. It's all one word, podcastbetweenthe.sheets@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and go have some fun between the sheets.